So I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, so kind of far away from you guys, far away from where I am now. I was kind of a Lego geek back then. I guess now we have Connects and other things, but I built a bunch of stuff. So probably right away, that's why I should have figured out that I should have been an engineer, because that stuff was pretty cool. I have to admit, my favorite classes in high school were math and physics. I love the stuff, so that was another clue that I probably should go into engineering. I studied mechanical engineering at Duke. I went on to graduate school. I somehow managed through all this to graduate top of my class, and I loved Duke so much I stuck around for a PhD. I mean, my first job, I went to work at the Naval Research Lab in Washington, D.C., and that's a pretty exciting place. It's directly getting to work for the U.S. Navy on real practical problems.
What's one of the hardest designs you've ever had to make?
That's a good question. What's the hardest design I've ever had to work on? I would say the most complicated was the nuclear power plant, because the main reason is that that is such a heavily regulated field by the government and by state agencies that they put so many constraints on what we can and can't do as far as design, as far as monitoring, and so forth.
Into a problem that you couldn't fix?
If I ever run it all the time. My life is full of more failures than successes, and I don't mean that cynically. I mean, we're always learning, right? Probably the hardest one for us was to get we were designing a system to monitor the landing gear of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, and it was using fiber optic sensing, and we just couldn't figure out how to get this sensor engineered right to measure the loads of impact during landing in a way that met the FAA regulations, and that was really disappointing to me because I really wanted to say, hey, I have a sensor on the Dreamliner.
I have a good friend whose husband works for Boeing. He's an engineer, and he's had to travel to like Japan, Korea. Have you ever had to do any of traveling like that? It's like 3 or 4 trips a year.
Yeah, in fact, this particular session with you guys was partially dictated, I think, by the fact that I was in China last week. So the answer is yes. In fact, if I were to share with you my frequent flyer statement for the year, I've already flown about 150,000 miles as of last week. So I do a lot of travel, and I go to mostly Korea and some to China and a little bit to Europe, and a lot of domestic travel. Frequently, I'm being asked to go to Washington, D.C., which, of course, is pretty far from San Diego, to consult with government agencies, the military, and provide updates on our research and development progress. So, yes.